Good afternoon, runners, and welcome to our NYRR HSS Coaches Chat. My name is Coach Steve. I am thrilled to be here. And first off, I need to say good luck to everyone who is in the drawing for the United Airlines NYC half. I know it's happening right now. A lot of you guys are excited to get in. Some people have already seen the charge on the credit card. So good luck to everyone. I don't have the answers. Don't ask me if you're in or not, but good luck. If I had a button right next to me to get you in, I would do it. The drawing happens all day long. So I think it closed around 6 or 7 o'clock Eastern time. So keep looking at your credit cards to see if you and you'll know that way you're in. But with that out of the way, I want to welcome our special guest from HSS, Brent Smith. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Steve, for having me as always. And I'm waiting to find out about my results as well. So, if you can do anything for me, I appreciate it.
You maybe get a special perk for you because you're on the show today. So I appreciate it.
Sure.
You joining today. Runners, we have a great show for you. We have 2 big topics, but as always, please leave your questions and comments in the chat from YouTube or from Facebook. I want to hear from you because this show is all about you and your questions. Today, we're going to talk about strength training in the off season and resting between major races. A lot of us completed, whether it was a TCS New York City Marathon, whether it was another major like Chicago, London, Berlin, Tokyo, you name it, we had so many races, even like Philadelphia, we had all these races this past fall. So kind of what to do after your big race. And it could also have been a small town race, which could still be a marathon, Wineglass happened, Steamtown. What to do for those off season and how to rest between big races. And that's really where I want Brent's knowledge to come from as a physical therapist at HSS. And he deals with these runners, I'm sure, throughout the days, the weeks, the years. And once you guys stay healthy out there so you can achieve your best next race in the spring, or maybe you're training for a Fred the Bow here in January, wherever you're located. So as I said before, put your questions and shout outs and concerns in the chat. I also want to know where you are watching from. And I love this question because we get runners across the nation and across the world that are just all together getting knowledge soaked into our brain from experts like Brent himself at HSS. So please let us know where you're watching from. We will shout you guys out throughout the show. But Brent, I want to jump to you quickly and talk about strength training in the off season. I call the winter time the off season, here winter and East Coast time the off season. Now maybe it's different for some reason. Like I'm training for London now, so my marathon is just training is ramping up right now. But a lot of runners, they just finished some races. So I want to start this off by talking about how long should a runner wait to strength train after those big races. We talk about taper, like the reverse taper for running. Don't run for about 30 days after, or don't hard run for 30 days after a marathon. Is that the same for like a strength training workout? And kind of go in depth about that.
Yeah, well, first, congrats on London. That's exciting. Good luck with that. Yeah, I would say in general, no hard strength training for about 2 weeks at least after the race. Depending on where you look, some people, say even longer, up to that, kind of like you said, up to a month. I think even within that first week after the race, you can start some very lightweight weight training, but anything too heavy, you do need to wait at least 2 weeks. When we run a marathon, we do a lot of damage to our soft tissue, right? The muscles, the tendons, and our body needs that time to heal and recover. And you can really delay that recovery and or do more damage if you jump right back into the heavier weight training that we might do during off season. So, again, I would say anywhere from about 2 weeks to about the month out, depending on how you're feeling.
Now, Brent, are there certain exercises runners should be doing more in those off seasons than maybe during a training cycle, like a marathon training cycle, a half marathon cycle? Should we be targeting different muscles or body parts when we're kind of not ramping up in high mileage days? And I'd like to kind of dive deep into that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think my first part to that answer would be when it's off season is when we should be lifting heavy, meaning you can lift out to the point that you get that DOMS, right? That second day soreness where you're where you're having difficulty walking. So it's not for me so much that the exercises themselves are different. It's just that you can push harder and heavier. I mean, obviously, one of the things that we can't forget about and that's going to be super important during off season is that core work, right? So not just the abdominal core, but I consider the glutes as part of the core for us as runners. So really refocusing in on that core to make sure it is nice and strong. So by the time you start marathon training again, that's not something that you even have to think about.
Are these, you mentioned the quads, the glutes, all that kind of stuff. Are
Mhm.
these things that we should, during the off season, should we be are they, can we do them at home, or because you're maybe doing more strength training, correct me if I'm wrong, or higher intensity, should we get a gym membership for the wintertime and hang out inside, or kind of what's the balance there versus heavy weights versus like I'm at home with my own weights or my body weight?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, I think if we start talking about the idea of pushing yourself harder and heavier weights, you want to make sure you do that in a safe environment. So, to answer your question, it really depends. It depends on who you are as a runner. So if you already have a routine built up, you know how to lift safely, you know how to protect yourself. That can happen at home. It can happen outside. It can happen at the gym. If you're newer to strength training, especially strength training for running, let's say, it's not a bad idea to get a gym membership, to meet with a personal trainer, to meet with a physical therapist, to get on a proper routine, number one, but also learn how to properly work out so that we don't want you injuring yourself during this heavy lifting season.
You brought up my next question, and I think it's a
Mhm.
valid one. I kind of want to talk about it again. How do we stay injury free? A lot of us, we have coaches for running, or
Yeah.
following plans, so hopefully it's building properly. But some new people to strength training right now are watching this, never done it before. So how do we stay safe in our first maybe go around with strength training during the off season?
Yeah, sure. I mean, don't do something you don't understand how to do, right? So if strength training is new to you, even if you're gonna be lifting light, meet with somebody, right? There's so many resources for personal trainers for education, and I don't mean online, even though that is a good resource, but having a trained professional to get their hands on you to really make sure you're going through your routine in a way that's safe, right? It's all about proper form. For myself as a PT, or if I'm training, the one thing you don't want to do is forego form to lift heavier and harder. Same with running. The minute we lose our form, we need to slow down or stop. So being smart about how you do it and know what you're doing, and just always maintain form is going to be my keys for staying injury free.
You mentioned working with a personal fitness coach, or someone at the gym. I'm assuming to help you with that. Are there things we should look for when looking for a strength training coach?
Yeah, I mean, for anybody in the athletic world, strength training, personal trainers, they have certifications that they will aid baseline. They should have a certification to even be working in that field. So, looking at the certifications, you could look for somebody that specializes in strength training for runners or strength training for athletes. And then obviously, the good old standby, just get referrals from individuals that that work with anybody. If there's no personal trainers that you can find, a physical therapist, right, is a great way to go. You can meet with a personal physical therapist for just a couple sessions to get yourself on a good training regimen, right, and then they can cut you free and on your own, and you can always come back to us if you need any tweaks there.
I love that. I want to jump over to our shout outs and questions from runners.
Mhm.
We're going to jump in these shout outs. Guys, thank you so much for writing to us. We have Volcano 0201 says, Happy holiday season from Orlando, Florida. Opposite weather we have from you guys, but thank you so much for our this morning. It's like super cold out. Thank you for watching from Florida. Mr. Johnny, I'm sorry for pronouncing your name wrong, says, I made it. NYC was hard. Thanks for the tips before the marathon. And then we have James Copey from Staten Island watching. Thank you guys so much. This question comes to you, or comes to you, Brent. Let's pull it up on the screen, AJ. It says, I injured my gluteus minimus and maximus during the high volume training period for the 2022 marathon. Any suggestions on how to strengthen these muscles and hips in advance of the 2023 racing season? Right on topic of what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And, kind of goes back to that whole idea that I talked about with the glute being a core muscle. It's so important. I mean, since the first thing I would have to say is, since you say you injured it, I mean, the first thing I would like you to do is go be seen by a medical doctor, a physical therapist, somebody to really evaluate to make sure, A, you're at a place where that tissue is healed, that you're ready to train again. Um, B, the next part of that is, as you start to re-enter training, you obviously need to start from a very low load, meaning not much weight, not as many repetitions, to introduce that overload into the muscles to make sure they're going to be able to tolerate it, and then gradually ramp your way up to get you ready to go into 2023. I mean, some basic suggestions of that is just going to be like bridging, right? Lying on your back, knees bent up, lifting the buttock up off the ground, squeeze for a second, slowly lower back down. That'd be a very basic way to just introduce that contraction to the glutes, make sure you're okay, and build from there.
Brent, great question, by the way, to
Yeah.
Matthew, or to Matthew. Yeah, thank you for that great question, because it does lead into what I was going to talk to you, Brent. And runners, if you are just tuning in, please put any questions you have for myself as a running coach, or you can add any questions you have for Brent, who works at HSS, and any injury, PT kind of questions. He can't diagnose, obviously, but anything, put that in the chat, and we're going to knock those out one by one. Also, if you're joining, let us know where you're watching from. We already got Florida, sunny Florida, in here, all over the country. Let us know where you're watching from. Matthew's question did bring me into what I was going to talk to you a second about, and I think it's great leeways. We're kind of the resting between major marathons, and this could be, once again, any times a year. And as Matthew alluded to, he had the gluteus kind of issues, minimus maximus issues, but a lot of runners do feel a lot of aches and pains after any marathon, whether it's TCS New York City Marathon or any marathon. Is there strategies to during the winter to come back stronger, maybe to overcome those injuries so we don't get them again? Or I'm assuming it's increased maybe strength workouts, but how do we come back after a marathon with aches and pains? When do we start strength training? In his example, he hurt his gluteus maximus. Do we wait until it's healed? Do we see someone to know it's healed? Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, no, lots of great ideas and questions there. I think number one, most importantly, is rest, right? So we talked about this when I spoke before the marathon about that taper period. So the tapering to the marathon, that 3 weeks where you decrease those miles, right? And then we talk about that you do that same taper after marathon, and you take about those same 3 weeks to taper up your miles, right? It's going to be the same thing for strength training. So you're not going to just jump right back into the gym after the marathon and expect your body to be ready to handle that load. So as we talked about at the start of the segment, right? It's at least 2 weeks before you start thinking of any type of heavy loading with weights, up to about a month, right? You really need to listen to your body and feel, do you feel the fatigue that says, don't do too much, don't overload it? Or are you feeling really good? And if so, you can reapproach your strengthening program. But again, start light. Don't throw your normative level of weights back on and think your body's going to be able to tolerate it. I think the worst thing you can do, again, restating what I've already said, is not letting yourself rest. Because if you let your body rest, it's going to repair, it's going to heal itself. So that when you get back into that hard winter training to get ready for the next marathon season, your body's going to be ready, and then you're going to be less likely to incur injuries from either the strength training or the running.
How do we know we're doing strength training properly, or how do we know that we are lifting the right amount of weight for us? Let's say we go to the gym and we're lifting, I don't know, 50 pounds. I'm not feeling anything. I'm not tired. Does that say I should lift more? Or is 50 pounds too much because I'm feeling sore the very next day? As a new person, how do we balance what should I lift? Because I don't know where I'm starting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a tough question. I mean, just like when we first start running, right? You have no way to know what mileage should I do, what pace should I do. I think number one, we go back to form. Anything you are lifting, you should not lose your form, right? So you're not doing compensations in your body, putting yourself in these weird positions, arching your back, unless it's called for that exercise to be able to lift those weights. Should you have soreness? Yeah, you should have soreness, especially when you start to ramp up the strength training. But it shouldn't be soreness to the point that all your normal daily activities you can't do. I would say, if you can't wash your hair, although no offense, Steve, for Steve and I, that's really not an issue, right? But if you can't reach up to wash your hair or to dress, I mean, there might be. Yeah, well, for our beard. Yes, you're going to have some soreness, right? And it's going to be harder to do things, but pushing yourself to the point that, you can't walk normally, or you can't perform your duties, maybe that's too much. Or if the soreness lasts too long. So in general, yes, you're going to be sore the next day. The highest level of soreness is probably the second day after your workout. And then from there, it should gradually decrease. It definitely shouldn't last longer than that week. But if your soreness lasts into day 3, 4, past the first week, you've done way too much and you need to pull it back. And really the only way to learn that is A, by experiencing it, right? Going out and doing it, but B, especially as a newbie with strength training, really sitting with somebody and let them work with you on proper form and how to build yourself a program to follow.
Going back to the marathon, a lot of people feel those aches and pains as they, whether it's in the marathon, mile 20, we start
Yeah.
feeling it or whatever mile it is, or afterwards, like the question earlier. Are there ways from a physical therapist standpoint to avoid those during a race where from a coach, I would focus on more mileage, you make a strong base, we're doing nutrition, we're pacing properly. But from a physical therapist, it's maybe the same answer, but it's physical therapist, are there a way to finish a marathon without those aches and pains while still getting a quality race? We're not obviously, walking, we're maybe running the whole thing or hard effort, but we still are going to finish without that gluteus maximus injury we had before, or a Achilles tendonitis injury that may have happened in the race. How do we maximize the race so we don't walk away injured or in big discomfort?
Yeah. Well, if somebody really learns how to do that, let me know, because right
Yeah.
about mile 20
Well,
is
does
when
it
you
come with the
start feeling
territory?
it.
It might come with the
Yeah.
territory of marathon running.
Exactly. No, it does come with the territory, right? Any endurance sport, you're going to have those discomforts, those aches. I'm not going to say pains, right? Because we never want to run through pain. So let's see. Let's look at it this way. If we think about the analogy of like, if you own a car, right? You don't just drive the car indefinitely without tuning it up to make sure it's ready for you. So when you think about your off season, that's you tuning your car, your body, right, to make sure it's ready. So the more continual work you do with your running, your strength training, your nutrition, everything all together, that's going to tune you, your body, your car, so that when you do start training for the marathon and you do run the marathon, you've done everything you can to get that body ready, which is going to help decrease those aches, those discomforts, right? But the flip side of the coin is it also depends on what your goal is, right? For those of us that are just running to finish, might not experience it as much if we run enough. But then when we start to push that pace and we start to PR and we really push it, right? We might open the door for more of those aches and discomforts just because you're pushing yourself like you would in a workout. So
Love that. Really good answer. Let's jump back
yeah.
to some questions and shout outs. All right. We have Oscar from Queens, New York in the house watching us. Thank you, Oscar. We have Luke from Atlanta, Georgia. And then we have Dave from Sarasota, New York joining. Thank you guys so much watching all around the country today. So thank you. We have a question here from a first time, coming up to the first time marathon. Let's pop it up on the screen here, AJ. Veronica from Miami, Florida. As a short distance interval runner, what should I consider and prepare for when wanting to train or run her first marathon? I think this is a really good question. And Brent, I'll kind of take it maybe from a coaching side, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably aspects of this that come from a strength training or a PT standpoint to make sure you get to the finish line healthy. So from a coaching standpoint, Veronica, I think it's something you need to look for a proper training plan that's going to meet you where you're at now. So a lot of training plans, I call them, static, whatever the term might be, but it has you running, 30 miles a week. But if you're not running, 25 miles a week right now, that's not the plan for you, because you want to start where you are now. So look at how many miles a week you're running right now and find a plan. Or once your marathon training starts, maybe if you're training for the marathon in November, look for something around, June, July-ish, and match something that matches where you are at that point. Don't always look at that finish line as the goal. You're starting at where you're at now. That's going to help you avoid overtraining in the long run. Looking for a great coach, whether that's in person, whether that's virtual, is great. I don't think necessary for runners, but a feature that I think get runners to have a better marathon. And better can mean either a better time or just a more joyful, positive experience with the race. You want to make sure also just proper gear. You're a runner. It sounds like Veronica, you do short distance runners, you have great gear, I'm sure, but make sure their shoes are properly fitted for you. Make sure they're shoes that you might need a little more cushion in them, depending on what you have now. You want something that's going to last you about, about 400 miles in it is when a shoe typically expire. Some can go longer, some go shorter. Just, talk to the sales rep and make sure you're fitted for that shoe. Make sure you have the proper gear for that, and just take it, run by run. Don't look at that whole, 3-month calendar as, don't look at that long 20-mile run that you just don't think you can do. Look at the first run as, okay, 5 miles. I can do 5 miles. I can do 8 miles the next week. I can do 10 miles, and every plan should go kind of an up down pattern where you're kind of going up in mileage and then you can come down in mileage, up in mileage, down in mileage. Sometimes it goes up 2-3 weeks and then down. Some plans go up a week and then down a week, back and forth like a staircase. So you figure out what plan works for you. Luckily, there is no shortage of training plans out there in the world for you, but find one that fits you. We do have the NYRR Coaching Lab by Run Coach program. You can check that out on our website. Coaching Lab program is great. It is that dynamic program, so we'll start you off at where you are, Veronica, and you get a coach along with it that's virtual. So you can look into that for your first training plan. Brent, like I said, is there things from a maybe first timer coming into a first time marathoner they should look at for injury prevention or injury if they do get any injuries, how to recover from that properly?
Yeah, right. And that's a big part for marathon training, right? Those injuries that can sneak in and keep you out. Making sure you're strengthening all your muscles in your lower extremities around every joint, right? So we're working our quads, the front of our thighs. We're working the hamstrings behind our thigh. We're working those glutes in the buttock. We're working our calf muscles with some like heel raises and such. The importance of that core musculature, the abdominal muscles, right? Lots of planks. Also, don't forget the upper extremities, right? You're running for 26.2 miles on your legs, but those arms are moving the entire way as well. So the importance of the stabilizing muscles, the arms, the back to hold yourself up. And I think just remembering, the difference, as you so well stated already, the difference between that short distance versus the long distance, right? So you don't think of nutrition at the same way for short distance that you're going to think for long distance. So Veronica, you're going to have to start thinking about the nutrition component before the race, during the race, after the race, and just go ahead and get yourself up to those 20, 25 miles a week. Just practice, normative runs even before you start marathon training. And that's really going to help decrease some of those instances of injury once you start training.
I'm glad you brought up the nutrition, Brent, and also brought up those, I call them the
Yeah.
base miles, where before you start
Mhm.
training, you do have like a part of a training that it might not call it that, but we're working on those base mileage to help avoid injuries and not starting from off the couch or at a mile. You're starting from, oh, I did 8 miles already before training started, or I can do 8 miles on a long run comfortably before the training starts, which does, to your point, I think help avoid injuries because you're a little bit stronger once you get those runs going. I love it. Veronica, hopefully that helped. Good luck in your first marathon that hopefully is coming up soon. Maybe it's TCS New York City Marathon in 2023. We hope to see you there. If not, good luck. Thank you guys so much for watching today. As I said before, if you are waiting to see if you get into the United Airlines NYCF, good luck. Brent, I'll see what I can do to get you in this year to the race, and we'll see you at the start line in Brooklyn. Runners, good luck out there, and we cannot wait to see you in our next chat, and enjoy the rest of your year. If we don't talk to you then, talk to you later.